Hi friends, Kathy Lanzalaco here with another episode of Inspire Career Spotlight on Careers, the video podcast series where I provide best-in-class career information, keep you up to date, and help you advance in your careers. And today I want to talk about the insidious career halter, which is imposter syndrome. Now, imposter syndrome is not just a woke term that people talk about today and everybody wants to claim. It's not that at all. So let's talk a little bit about what it is and what it is not. Imposter syndrome actually was first identified back in the 1970s by a team of psychologists. And it found that particularly women, it's not exclusively women, but particularly women, particularly in male-dominated fields, sometimes have difficulty embracing their success and really owning that success, meaning that they don't feel sometimes that they deserve it. So they can have achieved success, vice president status in the C-suite, on boards, national recognition, all kinds of things. They've built this incredible career and they really deep down feel like they don't deserve it. And I will tell you that I have struggled with that for many, many years. I think part of that for me has been because of my different iterations of my career, from nursing to HR to business ownership. And sometimes I have felt over time that I don't deserve the different success in these areas. And you don't have to have necessarily a linear career path. How many of us do? But when I worked in the corporate world, I know that I felt that way. I had a big corner office. I was in charge of an HR department, and I kept looking over my shoulder to say who was going to come and say, what is that girl doing there? And so I know that this is real, and I coach many executive women, and I hear often, not all the time, this is not every single person we know, but oftentimes I will talk to these women in deep coaching sessions and find out that this is how they feel. And listen, imposter syndrome is not lack of confidence. Everybody has a lack of confidence from time to time, but this is really a persistent belief that you are not worthy of the success that you have attained. And that potentially somebody's going to find out one day. And we know that this is not true. However, it can seem very real. And more importantly, that feeling of it being real holds us back from really achieving our full potential. So I want to talk today a little bit about ways to overcome imposter syndrome. And for you men that may be listening to this, it can absolutely happen to you. However, I will say I have yet to have a man that I've spoken with. And, kudos to you guys. That's great stuff. But women have been socialized to take a back seat. They have been socialized over time to believe that they are second-class citizens. Let's face it, women are still getting paid 83 cents on the dollar to what men are getting paid. So this is absolutely a truism about how women are brought up. I'm hoping that my daughter will not necessarily have those same experiences that I did growing up in my generation, and that these type of things do not impact her. But the reality is, at my age and many of the women that I coach, it is true. So let's talk about this. How do you know? Like when you say, sometimes I feel unsure of myself. Sometimes I think, maybe it's all the team. It really wasn't me. Listen, we all work in teams. We know this. We know we want to give credit to the people that support us. Even when the big stars go up and win their Oscars, they always think they're teams. So we know this. But that's not what I'm talking about. So how often, how does it manifest? How, as a woman in particular, when you may say, well, I don't know, how would I know if I have imposter syndrome? Well, the first way is you can have persistent self-doubt, right? You're ready to make a move, or you've achieved something. Did I do that right? Should I go ahead and do that? Should I put my hand up for that? Am I qualified? So these things, it's not just a lack of confidence. It's something that grows over time. It's something that becomes persistent. And maybe you even find yourself making decisions based on it. Also attributing success to external factors. Well, they gave me the position because they didn't have anybody else. And I will tell you that was exactly what my reaction was when I was nominated for the president-elect of the National Resume Writers Association. I said that to my family, and I have not. So if anybody watching hears, I haven't said it to you, but I did say it to my family, and I said, they must not have anybody else that wanted it because they came to me. What is that, right? I've earned it. I've worked hard, and it's a volunteer position, right? It's a board position on a nonprofit. So I have to work hard for it, and I have to work hard to do it. So it's a privilege. It's an honor to have been elected. But by the same token, I'm putting in the work, and I have put in the work. But, why do we do those things? And women do that all the time. So that's another thing. Fear of not meeting expectations. And I don't mean, I need a ramp up period of time in this new job, but this is when you're perfectly qualified for a job and you still feel like you're not doing enough. You're running harder, you're working harder, you're, constantly trying to do more to prove yourself. Women do that all the time. Overachieving. And listen, I'm not talking about when you're hardwired that's what you have done your entire life. Although, I'm not a psychologist, but I would also say that I suspect part of that is the beginnings of it. But working twice as hard to prove what your peers, what the men that you work with don't have to do. And again, it's not about putting in the effort. It's about that feeling that if I don't do it, I won't be successful. I'm not doing enough. Or sabotaging your own success. Have you ever done that? And I don't care who you are listening. We've all done it. How many times have you gotten right to the end line of a project or of a privilege or of something that you wanted to do, something in your personal life, and then somehow you stop it, you sabotage it. You're not even sure what happened. But if you took a step back, you realize that somewhere along the line, you did that. You were afraid of that success. So this again, it's not the lack of confidence. These are the things that happen. So women, are you out there listening? Does this sound a little bit like what you feel that you have been experiencing at times? It absolutely could be. I will tell you that as a career coach and as an executive coach, when I'm talking to people about applying for new jobs, putting out those job targets and saying, what am I going to go for next? Have the conversation all the time with women about how many of the qualifications do you really need to meet before you throw your hat in the ring for that job. There is literature all over the place. This is not a Kathy Lanzalanco thing, but there is literature all over the place to say that women historically will say, I got to have 8, 9, or 10 out of 10 things qualifications to apply for that job. Men, oftentimes they say 2 or 3. They throw their hat in the ring because they have the confidence and they say, I can do that job. And they're going to be awarded that job because that's exactly the perception that they put out. And then they go and they do a great job. But the woman could have done a great job too. But she isn't even applying for the job because she's rule-oriented, afraid of breaking the rules, afraid of stepping out, told, no, you must be a good girl. You shouldn't be doing that. And so she doesn't even apply for it. So oftentimes when I'm talking to women, we talk about their strengths. And should you be applying for that C-suite job? What feedback have you already received? Why wouldn't you do that? Have you built this career already up to that point? And sometimes it is through that coaching that they're able to get that additional confidence and that nudge to make that move. There's a lot that goes into it even before they get there. So, really the idea is that it can happen. It's insidious. You don't even know it's happening until one day you kind of realize it and say, I didn't even know why I did that. And then maybe through coaching, through deep reflection, through feedback, through friends, you're able really to identify that this is what's happened. So let's talk about ways to overcome this. So, we don't have to live in this space forever. Like so many things that we do, it really is about trying to get out of our own way in that regard, trying to undo the programming that we have inherited, that we have accepted, that we have fostered ourselves. Because the reality is we have done that over time. So how can you do that? Trying to reframe your thoughts is the first thing that you can do. When you see or when you can feel that you are getting caught into that trap, tell yourself, nope, I'm not going to do that. I am capable. I am qualified. Now listen, it sounds like, I'm standing in front of the mirror telling myself I'm fabulous. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking really about taking a step back, owning all the success that you've had. Sometimes it's helpful to write it out. Sometimes it's helpful to get feedback from other people that you trust and that have been on the journey with you. But it starts in our minds. And so reframing our thoughts is the first thing. Maybe you want to do affirmations that you can continue to say on a consistent basis to help rewire those thoughts in your head. But it really is about trying to stop those thoughts when you know them, when you see them, when you feel them. Being able to be honest with yourself and say, yeah, I stood in my own way for that. Why was I doing that? Why? What am I afraid of? And being able to talk through it. Might be with a coach, might be with a therapist, might be with a friend. Sometimes it's just the deep reflective work too, but it is consistent. It needs to be consistent. Imposter syndrome isn't just a one-time decision. That's not what this is about. This is about the pattern of behavior. So the behaviors start in our head. So we have to be able to address that. The other thing is to seek positive feedback from people. And when you receive the positive feedback, to listen to it, to believe it. Now, I'm not talking about going out asking for compliments. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying taking a deep dive. Go back and pull those performance appraisals. Listen to the feedback your boss is giving you, your peers, other people in the industry, the people that work for you. What do they like about you? Why do they work for you? Why have you been consistently promoted into positions of increased responsibility? Go back through that journey and try to reframe those things, own what you've done, own all those accomplishments, and reframe them in a way that helps you say, yeah, I did that. All right. Maybe you got to keep those pieces of paper out. Maybe you make a little cheat sheet for yourself. Maybe every night before you go to bed, you journal about it. Everybody has a different way of being able to work through those things. But the important thing is that you can amass some of that proof, if you will, so that you can see it, you can look at it, you can get involved in it and feel yourself, see yourself into it. So the second thing is being compassionate with yourself. We women, and I will tell you, we talk about achievers and overachievers. We women are hard on ourselves. We carry a lot of burdens. We carry a lot of responsibility. We're still doing the majority of the work in the house, and we're still getting paid 83 cents on the dollar to men. But however, it really is about cutting ourselves some slack, giving ourselves some grace, however you want to phrase it. But it is to be able to look at ourselves and say, hey, you know what? I got this. I got this. Okay, this is what I've done in the past. I'm going to do different going forward. I'm going to view myself differently going forward. I'm going to accept myself differently going forward, and I'm going to behave differently going forward. I'm going to open my mouth. I'm going to raise my hand, and I'm going to look for those opportunities. And when you do that, and don't you talk to your kids this way oftentimes too, right? Helping to build their confidence. But we're not talking about necessarily lack of confidence here, but building up your confidence and being intentional about the way that you approach these opportunities and the way that you approach the reflection can help change the way that you think about it. The other thing is to practice. Practice speaking up. Practice asking for what you want. Practice for saying no about what you do not want. Practice volunteering for things. And I don't mean you have to be the one that volunteers for everything because you feel like if you're not volunteering for everything, you're not doing enough work, but volunteering for the work that you want to do. Volunteering for the tasks that you want, for the projects you want to be on, for those trips you want to take. You want to be at a certain table? Ask for it. Why, women, do we not do that? Because again, it's back to that socialization piece. I'm very hopeful that my daughter will not experience that in her lifetime or have a minimal experience where myself, it's been rampant and many of the people in my generation. Things are changing. I hope they are. However, it is practice. We own it all ourselves. This is not, yes, there's societal pressures and conditioning, but we are responsible for ourselves. So it really is about saying, okay, I understand that, and I don't want to do that anymore. So how am I going to get over that? And it is about practice. So it's about practicing, as I said, practicing asking what you want. I call that finding your voice and owning what you want. Nobody's going to give you anything, right? We know this. And even when you've achieved great success, you've earned it. So you haven't just gotten to the C-suite just by happenstance. So the other thing is to mentor others behind you. Now, why is that? Well, you say, well, wait a minute. I feel like I'm the one that has imposter syndrome. I'm the one that is struggling this. What does mentoring others have to do with that? And the purpose for that is because it helps you claim your power. And when you share your power with others and you help others see the power within them, that has a way of breaking down the walls of the imposter syndrome, breaking down the impact that it has, and improving your own mental awareness of what's happening. And do you think that those women behind you don't have it as well? Many of them probably do. And that doesn't mean you go asking everybody about it and, talking about that and implying that everybody has that, but it's not running away from it either. Having the conversation. When you hear those clues from other women, perhaps you're mentoring them, perhaps they're your peers, and you're on a business trip or whatever it might be. Listening for that language that gives you a clue and hints to you and says, what am I hearing in there? That's a great time that even if you're not formally mentoring someone else, to be able to provide feedback and ask, why do you think that? Why would you say that you're not worthy of that? Why would you have said that? I think you're wonderful. Or have you seen what you've done? And maybe allow that space for a conversation for someone else to express what their concerns are, what their thoughts are. It's so easy to see it in someone else and so difficult to see it in ourselves. But helping the next generation of people coming before us or coming after us can be a great way to overcome that. And it can be difficult sometimes too, because if you think, who am I to coach that person? But yes, women, I'm talking to you. This is talking about what you have to give. And again, it doesn't mean that you have to be mentoring everybody and taking responsibility for everybody. That is not what I'm talking about. This really is about an intentional decision to recognize these thoughts and feelings and behaviors that have held you back for multiple reasons and changing them. And often through our journey of helping others, we help ourselves, which is really the best place to be, where everybody's winning. The other thing I would say is, in addition to being compassionate with yourself and cutting yourself some slack and all that, is really maybe set some realistic goals for yourself. What milestones do I want to see in my own self? Listen, you're planning your career, you're planning your performance, you're planning your vacation, you're planning all of these things. So why don't you take the time to set the goals for this particular situation and say, within the next 3 months, I am going to have done these certain things. And maybe that's just even owning and changing the way that you respond to different situations and tracking over time how different you feel. Are you getting different results? Are you feeling more empowered? And empowered sometimes can get overused as well. But within that empowerment is the building of the confidence. And in the building of the confidence, sometimes you can see yourself in a different light. How many people, men, women, everybody, you feel lousy when you're feeling lousy. But when you've had a success, rather than downplaying it, lean into it. Lean into it. I remember when I worked in the corporate environment, I had several bosses actually, that had said to me, Kippy, you don't celebrate enough. You need to celebrate. You and your team did some really great work. Can we just take a minute to celebrate it? And I was like, well, I told my team they were great. He's like, that's not what I'm talking about. Own it. And at the time, I remember distinctly feeling like, on to the next thing, on to the next thing. There's no time to dawdle. And the reality is, my boss himself was telling me, Kathy, that's great work. Relax. Just live in it for a few minutes. And here I am, probably 10 years later, thinking about it and talking about it. But it took me a while to kind of realize what he was saying to me. And now I try to do that. I try to do that in my business. I try to do that with my clients. And it's really important. Celebrating those successes, back to the practicing thing, that often helps as well. So the other last thing I kind of want to say on this topic for today is that as we talk about different things, different challenges that we have, and if this is imposter syndrome, if you see yourself in that phrase, recognize that it is within our control to change these things. And as women, continue to speak up, continue to fight for our rights, for healthcare in this country, for a seat at the table in our businesses, for equal pay, for all of these things. We are not going to be handed any of this. We know this. Whether it is through consistent asking, whether it is on the opposite end of protesting, whatever it is. We need to understand what we want, identify what we want, decide how badly we want it, and then go after it. And if you don't want it, that's okay too. Everybody can decide what they want. But the reality is we have to own this. And we are carving a path for ourselves and for the women that come behind us. And we don't own their futures, but we do owe it to them to think about their futures and to be able to pay it forward and pay it backward. Because there have been women who have come before us that have done it for us. And as you think about this, and it's an election year, this is 2024, and it's an election year. And it wasn't so long ago that women did not have the right to vote. So when we talk about how far women have come, I don't know how many of you were old enough to remember the Virginia Slims commercial back in the 70s and 80s. You've come a long way, baby. And the girl smoking the cigarette in the commercials. Well, that's the cigarette isn't the issue. But the idea that we have come a long way, but there's a lot of work left to do. We do it for ourselves. We do it for womanhood. And my wish for all of you today listening for this is that you do own everything that you've earned. People aren't handing you anything. You've earned it all. And if you do get a gift, and I mean if someone has given you an opportunity and they've seen something in you, they know that you can do it. And if you've had that thought, and if you've had a goal and a desire, it's placed in you because God knows you can do it. Because you're never given a gift and you're never given an idea without the ability to actually complete it and to have it and to do it. You might not know how it's going to happen. It might be a lot of work, but I encourage you all today to love yourselves, to own your wonderful, wonderful accomplishments that you've had. And if you see yourself in the conversation of imposter syndrome, to know that it's nothing that we cannot overcome. This is not a badge, a scarlet letter that we have to wear forever. It's just acknowledgement, and we can work on it ourselves because we've accomplished everything else. And I will leave you with that thought for today. Oh, and one more thought before we meet again. Of course, I'm going to tell you to live inspired, but I'm also going to tell you today that there are so many other women out there that may not see themselves in this. And while we can't save everybody, and I'm not suggesting we should save anybody, we're all responsible for ourselves. I like the idea of helping a sister out too. So I'm here. That's what I'm hoping to do today. So please share this with somebody that may need to hear it. And if I can help you, please let me know as well. We're at the end of our podcast for today. So, hey, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Subscribe to the Inspire Career Spotlight on Careers and get great information. Listen, have you listened to the recent podcast I had with Melanie Denny? She talks about personal branding for women. And in that, she talks about lack of confidence and imposter syndrome as well. So I invite you to follow up and listen to that too. So until we meet again, live inspired.